If the Bears keep Justin Fields, what would that roster look like? We go through that next on the Unbearable Sports Podcast.
I'm going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube and rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast, and also rate 5 stars out on Apple Podcasts, because if you do, you can be in the entry for a Darnell Wright jersey. Once we reach 58 5-star ratings, we'll give the jersey away to someone live on the show. What's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great week so far, and we talked about it yesterday on the live show. If you haven't attended a live show, hope to see you there Sundays and Wednesdays live at 7:30 on YouTube. But yesterday we talked about, kind of like did a mock offseason. We talked about cap casualties, re-signing players, and mock drafts, the whole thing. But we did it about what would happen if the Bears got Caleb Williams, which it seems like the most likely outcome. So with this, I wanted to flip it and say, what if the Bears keep Justin Fields? And really ask, what if? Because now we can see and kind of compare, what do the two scenarios look like? Because if you're a Justin Fields fan, this is the show for you right now, because we're going to break down how that differentiates against Caleb Williams. So a lot of these beginning parts are already kind of figured out, but let's just kind of go through this because we talked about it on the show yesterday, like I mentioned before. If you haven't, go watch, listen to that show, and you'll kind of understand some of the logic behind some of these picks. But let's go through cap casualties first before we get into everything else. So yesterday we walked through some cap casualties, and ultimately we decided that Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair were going to be our cap casualties. So $12.5 million in savings off of Eddie Jackson and $9.1 million savings with Cody Whitehair out. We didn't decide to cut Nate Davis, DeMarcus Walker, or Travis Homer just because there wasn't enough. I mean, Travis Homer probably is going to be one later on if they draft a running back. But mainly just Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair were the big people that we decided to cut. But if we continue going through, who did we decide to resign? It was Jalen Johnson. We ended up tagging him for $18.8 million, and we let basically everybody else walk just because they'll probably want a good handful of money, and they really haven't shown much. Like with Justin Jones, Yannick Ngakoue, and Darnell Mooney really feels like he wants to be on the way out. And let's be real here, we don't want to re-sign any of the center any of the centers that we currently have on this roster. So that leads us to the free agents. Now, a lot of the free agents I copied from what we did yesterday just because a lot of these free agents I really do like. Starting with the center, Connor Williams out of the Miami Dolphins. I said this yesterday, has that center guard versatility. And also, if you can nab him for 1 year, $6 million. All these numbers also are coming from Brad Spielberger, who is the expert when it comes to all things salary cap. So if you don't like the numbers, bring it up with him. But he is so phenomenal at what he does with predicting the numbers and what someone might get. So Connor Williams, he has at 1 year, $6 million. Sign me up for that at the center position. But now if we go over to the safeties, this is where there was a little bit more debate, where maybe Xavier McKinney or Geno Stone. Ultimately, Julian Blackmon, the former Indianapolis Colt, we ended up signing as our safety. Now, next was wide receivers. Now, rather than bringing in a lot of different wide receivers, because wide receivers can be pricey, we decided let's just bring in a one Curtis Samuel for 2 years, $18 million. And the big reason, Curtis Samuel, very good playmaker, also very good friends with DJ Moore. And especially if we're doing a bring back Justin Fields, keep the locker room vibes going, why not bring back DJ Moore's best friend, right? Just start bringing in people's friends, Curtis Samuel, and then you just got the all-time locker room highs going on. And the thing, too, that I haven't mentioned yet, too, I think from a coaching perspective, Greg Roman, we've talked about it before, Greg Roman kind of gives the Bears the best chance in keeping Justin Fields, if that's something that you want, just because he's very similar. He kind of teach what he did with Lamar Jackson. And I think that's That's the reason why, if you're a Justin Fields fan and you really want him to come back, Greg Roman is actually the best guess because he'd be out there, right? And he can definitely take what Lamar Jackson knows and kind of duplicate that with some of what Justin Fields can do. Now, let's also flip over to the defensive line, where yesterday we went with Chris Jones because we could, right? We were getting a new rookie quarterback. But with this, I said we can't do Chris Jones because Chris Jones is projected $30 million a year and for over 4 years. And when you think about it, that matches up perfectly with a rookie contract for a quarterback. So for this, Justin's, if he does well, and if, in this scenario, in the what if land, if we keep Justin Fields, he's going to have that 1 year. And then next year, if he gets the 5th-year option, or if they were to franchise tag him, that's $38 million for the franchise tag, or he's projected to get $43 million, or his, I think the 5th year is 23 to 26, right? So yet again, we're playing the what if game, and that's where I was saying maybe the Bears might be better off with a 1-year flyer on someone and another one of Justin Fields' friends with Chase Young. And I know that there's a big split on Chase Young because of his knee injury. And I still see that he kind of favors that knee a little bit, but he can still give you a lot of really good pass rush moves. And if you can get him for 1 year, $15 million, really not a bad deal, especially when you already have DeMarcus Walker, who's a phenomenal run stuffer. So I think he's a good complement because he's able to add a lot more when it comes to pass rush moves. Obviously, you can always look at Danielle Hunter or Jonathan Grenard as another defensive end prospect. But for this exercise, I wanted to match up everybody's friends, right? I think in this scenario, it's a giant what if. I'm like, why not bring in everybody's friends? So that's really what we have for the free agents, at least, because the free agents, that was big, right? We just wanted to grab a handful of them. You're not going to be signing them like crazy because right now with the free agents and also with the draft pool, because we have to factor in the draft as well. Not a lot of people do that. So I have $15 million set aside for the draft. And right now we're at $15.7 million. So the Bears still have a little bit of flexibility so they can bring in a veteran. So that's actually really nice with just this current configuration of the cap. And for those that listened yesterday, I didn't bring this up. At the end of it all, we had $4 million in cap space, which is not great, but still there's so many minute little pieces that can go out without that. As long as we're not super far in the negative, we're all fine. But like I mentioned, we still at least have a good chunk of change still left over even after the draft. And when you look at the team, what do we have right now? It's pretty good. You look at the defense with Blackman and Brisker at safeties, you're feeling a little bit better at that. You look at the line, you have Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings up the middle. You might want to bring in a little bit of help at D tackle, but the defensive ends, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, right? You also bring Chase Young back because of the friendship with Sweat, and also you have Walker as the backup. You feel a lot better about this defense, and this is what you can do because the Bears have a good chunk of cap space, but also they can cut some players like Eddie Jackson and Cody Whitehair. Now on the offense, before the draft, the big hole is wide receiver. Like we said, if we're going to keep Justin Fields, now we can trade, we can get wide receivers, and we can build around Justin Fields. And now we have cheap wide receivers around him in this scenario. Now, the only concern, though, this is something that we brought up that was the biggest concern with any of this, is the big question mark with Nate Davis. Because if you cut him post June 1st, you only save $2 million. That's really not a lot of money to be saving. If you cut him pre-June 1st, you're basically breaking even with it. So Nate Davis, you have to hope that he can at least kind of regress back to the mean unless, wait for it, you draft someone that can help out the offensive line, right? It would be awesome to do that, especially for Justin Fields. So let's go into my mock draft, because this is, I think, when you talk about the differences between keeping Justin Fields and not keeping Justin Fields, the biggest difference is when it comes down to the mock drafts. I don't think anyone's shocked by that statement, but it is. So I have my mock draft right here that I put together, and I really just wanted to kind of break it down as what can you expect, right? I don't want to get down to the super, super nitty gritty, but if the Bears ended up keeping Justin Fields, what could you expect? And this is where I think that's still the ideal scenario is you trade back to New England. Now, this deal was a 22% acceptance rate over at PFF, so I sweetened it up a little bit, but I already know a lot of Bears fans are going to say not enough. So I did the first pick for the third pick in the draft, the 34th pick in the draft, and a first and a second next year. Reason why I didn't throw in the third, I feel if they're drafting a quarterback, they probably want to keep at least some sort of capital to build around him in some sort of capacity. Now, Christian Barmore, I didn't include him because he has to get paid after this season. But another person, too, that I just want to call out, Washington, I could see Washington absolutely going crazy, and maybe you then get a Jonathan Allen that's thrown in there. So no matter what, you're getting a good deal. Like, you're going to get a haul, and a lot of rumors say it could even be bigger than this if the Bears want to trade down. So because of this, we get Marvin Harrison Jr. No surprise here, right? You get the best wide receiver in the draft. You get the person who I've said is going to just instantly come in and be a top 10 wide receiver. He's just that freaking good. So now your wide receivers, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have DJ Moore, and you have Curtis Samuel. That's a good wide receiving core with a very good tight end. You're feeling good about what Justin Fields has around him. And then you go to the 9th pick. In the 9th pick, Rome Odunze was not there, and Brock Bowers in this draft was not there. But the number 9 pick I find very intriguing because there's a lot of quarterback-hungry teams that might want to move up for their guy. And there's one person who's a quarterback guru that would definitely want to hop up and grab his guy, and that is Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos. So Sean Payton, I could see him jumping up, so he's giving us the 12th pick, the 76th pick, and a third-round pick next year for the 9th pick in the draft. So we were able to move back. And the reason why I love the idea of us moving back, shifting back a little bit, is that's kind of in the golden zone of defensive linemen. Because you might get a Dallas Turner as defensive end, and you might get a Jared Verse out of Florida State. But I ended up going with Jerzon Newton or Johnny Newton from Illinois just because he is by far the best defensive tackle in the draft, and you really, really, really have that center of the position solidified. And since we already added Chase Young, and we already have DeMarcus Walker, to me, you can keep Newton, and now the interior is just this insane young nucleus. You'll never have to change these defensive tackles. You got Pickens, you got Gervon Dexter. It's just going to be an epic up-front attack. But still, at that position, you can swap out a Dallas, a Turner, a Verse, or Latu, whoever your favorite defensive lineman is, you can just insert right there. So next, we still have that second-round pick, the 34th pick in the draft. What I did with that is I actually traded back. I didn't love some of the people that were around there. Some offensive linemen, I thought it was too early to get like a tackle, or I don't love some of those prospects. And some of the wide receivers, I felt like we didn't need. So what I did, I traded back with the Jags and ended up getting the 79th pick in the draft and the 48th pick. So we got even more people that we can build around we can put around Fields, right? So with that 48th pick, I went Jackson Powers Johnson, the center out of Oregon. He is this behemoth, and what I love about him, besides just as a complete mauler at the center position, he's also a player that can play guard. He can play guard. He can play center. And what I love about that is, yet again, Nate Davis. What is he going to do? Tevin Jenkins. Is Tevin Jenkins going to re-sign for a big money deal? And also, I forgot to mention this, Connor Williams had an ACL injury, so you don't know how long he's going to be out. So that's why I love Powers Johnson, because he gives you that flexibility to then move around the offensive line, and he has huge upside to be an absolute game wrecker in the middle of the line. But as we continue to go down, J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback out of Michigan, dropped, and I'm like, I'm just going to add him. If he drops to the third round, take him. He's your backup. Sorry, Bajent. He's good. Just give him a chance, right? Then Javon Bullard is one of my favorites in the third round. Safety out of Georgia, gives you depth at that position. Jalen McMillan, wide receiver out of Washington, gives you wide receiver depth. Blake Fisher, tackle out of Notre Dame, gives you some tackle depth. And then also Cade Stover, the tight end out of Ohio State, giving you some tight end depth. The later picks, we're going with depth. We have our 3 starters, though, up at the front. So what does this haul look like for us? Let's take a glance, shall we? So our new look offense, wide receivers, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Marvin Harrison are our starters. Justin Fields, like we said in this, Bears keep Justin Fields. Khalil Herbert is the running back. The offensive line, Braxton Jones, Connor Williams, Jackson Powers Johnson, Tevin Jenkins, and Darnell Wright. And then you kind of have Nate Davis as the backup, unless he can move up, right? You have depth at that interior of the line, and then you have the tackles. You also have the rookie tackle that we just drafted to add some depth and some competition, and Cole Kmet. Now, over on the defense, we have Julian Blackmon, Jaquan Brisker in the back at safeties. We have Edwards and Edmonds at linebacker, Johnson, Gordon, Stevenson as the corners, and up front, we have Chase Young and Montez Sweat and DeMarcus Walker as your defensive ends, with Andrew Billings, Johnny Newton, and Jervon Dexter and Zach Pickens. Just a fearsome defense that you have, young defense that can really do something this year. What do you think? What do you think about this as well? Because also one of the big pieces, the Bears have a first-round pick next year, a second-round pick, 2 second-round picks next year, because also, technically 3 total. You have 1 extra first, 2 extra seconds, and 1 extra third. That's what happens, right? I'm glad that we went through this. I'm glad that we went through this exercise, because I think that's the thing. Ryan Poles has a huge decision to make. And I think the benefit of going through an exercise like this is you really do get to see what would happen if they go the other ways. Let me know down below what you want the Bears to do. And also, if you didn't see our other show, make sure to check that out just so you can kind of see the conversations that were being had. It's 45 minutes, so it's a lot longer than this. But we talk about it a little bit more. But really with that, you get Caleb Williams and you get this. You're really kind of taking Caleb Williams. And with this, you're betting on Justin Fields, and you're also getting more draft capital. But also, too, the key thing is after this year, he really does have to prove himself. Like I said, what did you think about the haul? Was there anything that you would have done differently? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. I hope you all have a great weekend. Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a